Hello, beautiful healing community. It's your girl, Salenna Green, and it's another episode of the Hot Girls Healing Podcast. Today, we are talking about speaking your truth. And I know that could be a little scary, but me and my friend Tyi are here to talk you through it. Tyi is a wonderful human that I have met in the Black casting. Like, this Black podcasting community, y'all, they doing something. Tap in, find you a Black podcast, find you a Black healing podcast, and get into it. Now, before we get into our conversation for today, I would love it if, Tyi, you could just introduce yourself to the people, let them know who you are, let them know anything they need to know about you before they hear you speak on this topic.
Wow. Well, that was such a wonderful intro, Selena. Um, Thank you once again for allowing me to be on your platform. I love like the healing podcast. Like we need to bring back a whole bunch of just healing podcasts, just a whole range of it because it's needed. But I am Tyi Flood. A lot of people may know me from doing podcasts like way back when it first really launched, early 2000s. Definitely count myself as one of the pioneers of internet radio. Started out with the Tea Time show. I started out with a few shows, then did my own. The last show that I did was Flood the Block Radio. I actually just got back into kind of like the television podcast world with the dating pool show that I'm working on right now. I've also worked with Mad Flavor TV, so I've done a lot of also media outside of that. Um, a lot of media production. Um, Arts and entertainment has been a part of my life for years. So I've worked in
Mm.
radio, television, you name it. A very, very wonderful journey. Um, I'm also an author, so I have I wrote two books and contributed to one anthology piece. And a lot of the books, I actually loved writing when literature was like one of my favorite classes
Mm.
when I was in school. So I was always in depth with like writing poetry and writing. And actually, I didn't realize at that time how influential journaling was and how it was going to be for my life now. So writing, I started writing when I got into the mental health and wellness field back in 2016, 2017. I was like, you know what? There were a lot of things that I felt like a lot of people needed to be educated on. So I'm also a mental health and wellness advocate. And I am now, I mean, that encompasses like healing, I'm a healing coach as well. So a number of things. I'm a mother.
Mm.
I am also, I'm an educated Black woman. I do have my master's in science and business administration. So I've done a lot in my lifeline, but that is just a short glimpse of who Tyi Flood is. So thank you for having me.
Y'all hear this multi-talented woman here and ready to share with y'all? Gratitude. That's what you should be feeling right now.
Thank you. I'm a very humble person. It's so interesting because I've always been people will always get on me because they like you are too humble. Like you don't tell people all the things that you've done, all the things that you do. So I'm trying to be a little better with that, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't, but here we are.
I am feeling gratitude. Let me not tell y'all what you should be feeling. Let me tell you what I am feeling. I am
Gratitude is
feeling
a
so
definite.
grateful. I
Yes.
am so grateful for you having this conversation with me, being willing to share all of your experience and knowledge. Like this conversation, speaking your truth is hard. It's
Yes,
extremely hard to do.
it really
And
is.
it's something that took me years to do. I feel like sometimes in this world, you start speaking your truth as a child and you are conditioned into no longer speaking your truth by the time you're an adolescent.
You know what? That is so funny because that is the absolute truth. And I still struggle now speaking my truth. And you kind of bring up a point because as a child, very vocal. I've always been very vocal and will always get like slapped or like, stop, you're running your mouth too much. You're telling too much or I was that some call, maybe rude or whatever. Cause I would just be like,
Mhm.
but this doesn't make sense. But why are you, very outspoken. And you're right. Like when you get your hand slapped a few times, it makes you feel as though, you're not allowed to have that free speech, that you're not allowed to be that true person and really speak your truth. Or if you get slapped on the hand for, like, don't embarrass our family, don't do this, don't do
Mm-hmm.
that, that also puts you into this, like, you're just kind of like, okay, I'm scared to say this. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to embarrass anyone. Um, and it really shuts you down, and you're not allowed to speak up and hopefully help someone who needs that help because you're too afraid. And also just too
Yeah.
afraid of judgment. I think judgment as well is that major play, is like, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to feel as though now with social media is like what you say, it's going to be reposted. So you're just like, I don't know whose hands this is going to get into. So it's very important to definitely build up that confidence, to speak your truth. And I want to shout out, there's a lot of women who have been so motivational for me. Like, they've motivated me to feel like, wow, okay, they've done this, I can do this too. This is, it's funny because my pastor today, one of his sermons today was talking about, being who you're called to be,
Mm-hmm.
and, do your thing. Like, it's your thing. If you know that this is something that is, a gift from God, that that someone is going to benefit from, then that is your, stay in your lane, and I've talked about that
Yeah.
too. So yeah, very, very grateful. Gratitude is definitely a great word to use, because to be able to be in this space of comfort, being able to be in this moment of being so comfortable in my skin and being comfortable with my voice, that I'm willing to, say, I'm willing to share it with other people. I'm willing to speak up. So,
Oh, oh my God, that is so the part. Like, in my in my childhood
mhm.
specifically, I heard children should be seen and not heard.
Yep,
It
yep,
just again and again and again. Anytime I had an opinion, anytime I had a question, anytime I made too much noise, be seen and not heard.
hmm,
And it gets to a point where it's like you do start receiving that messaging that people don't want to hear your voice. They
yeah,
don't want to hear your voice. They don't want to hear your analysis. They don't care about your opinion. And then I think for me, to a certain extent, I started to internalize that. Well, I don't
hmm,
care about my opinion either. I don't care about what I think. Who
yeah,
cares?
yeah, yeah, and and us as Black women, we're definitely, we grow up with a lot of strong Black women in our families. Like, I was raised by, my mom. I love her to death. She was always my backbone. Like, she's like always in my corner. And then I have, some aunts, very and great aunts, very strong Black women. Um, and you don't really realize, like, what a lot of these strong Black women, like, a lot of stuff that they have that they're carrying on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, telling, those kind of words of saying, hey, you shouldn't speak like this, you shouldn't do that, that sometimes is kind of brought down, by cycle to
Oh.
cycle, generation to generation. And so it's interesting, like, my aunt, may have been told, you can't talk like this, and so she taught her children that, so it's like one of
Mhm.
those learned behaviors that you get. So I'm actually really grateful that, despite just kind of that mentality of no, 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 I'm grateful that my mom did allow me to feel a little comfortable with being able to, she wants me to be happy, obviously. But I do admire the fact that I was around a lot of strong vocal Black women that contributed to me being, the vocal person that I am. But there's definitely, I can definitely, and I'm thinking, as I'm talking, like, my brain is just going down memory lane of just like conversations
Mhm.
and different things that may have impacted me today. And we talked about this, like, we had a really good conversation, Selena, like a week or so ago, and we talked about how childhood situations, because not everything that you've dealt with, every experience is traumatic
Mhm.
necessarily, but how your childhood really affects who you are when you become an adult. I am 43 years old now, and I am still in this moment of trying to be fully, like just that full cycle of like breaking cycles.
Mm.
Um, Once again, being comfortable, in my own skin. Like healing. And we kind of tapped into, I may be fast forwarding a little bit. So I started out with mental health,
Mhm.
and really gearing towards helping people in the community, a lot of moms, because I was a young mother, like I mentioned, and then also just women in general, who may deal with depression,
Mm.
anxiety. And then also I started um, tapping into PTSD, which people don't really talk, they didn't really talk about women. They didn't really connect women and PTSD a lot because you would
The
hear
way you thought
PTSD.
that you had to go through war to have
Yeah, yeah.
PTSD.
PTSD was like one of these things, like you had to be a veteran, you had to have
Mhm.
experienced. But when you really, when I really started educating myself, I was like, wait a minute. And really talking to, having certain mental health classes, because I was
Mm.
also a mental health first aid, and just kind of going through, I'm like, PTSD is not, that is not a military like
Right.
disorder. Like that, it's about traumatic experiences. And a lot of women, especially because I can speak, just speaking for women and men, of course, they've never been in a war before, not combat, not, anything like
Mm.
that, but they have so much trauma that is deep, like runs deep, in their body,
Ooh.
runs deep in their mind. Some of the, trauma is passed down, when we talk
Mhm.
about how the childhood affects, a lot of the trauma is passed down, because when you think about it, I know for a fact that there's some traumatic experience that my mom or my aunts or what have you that I've mentioned that they've experienced, and they've never dealt with it. They didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
and I mean, there's a generational aspect to this. Like,
Mhm.
they weren't always just passing down directly the trauma that they experienced. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
like, oh, well, my mama used to knock the hell out of me. I just tell y'all to be quiet,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
they're still doing their part to negate these negative practices, or take them away, or shield you from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're taking it a step away. They just, they're not there yet. Because you
Yeah.
whole time you're like, okay, but I'm still getting told to shut up. Like, I'm still getting my voice taken away from me. And they're like, well, I'm not physically abusing
And that is such a great point, because I think every, as a mother myself, like I was like, I don't want to do this.
you.
I don't want to repeat these particular patterns. And you're right. I think a lot of parents, they they have that mindset. I don't want to repeat certain cycles, certain unhealthy cycles,
Mm.
or patterns, and pass it down to my child. But once again, like you said, they probably don't realize that even though they're subtracting, or they're trying to, like, you know, disconnect one thing, it still may be interpreted by their child another, in an
Mm.
unhealthy way. Um, and I think it really just comes down to self-awareness too. I think one of the biggest responsibilities that I've learned as a mother is being self-aware and
Mm.
holding myself accountable for the things that I say, the things that I do, the things that I show around my child,
Mm.
um, and how I didn't want to project certain fears, certain trauma, onto my child, because as a mother, and as a Black woman who has faced, childhood abuse, sexual abuse, um, I think the normal thing is for us to want to shield our children and be like, nope, you can't, you're not going to spend the night over nobody's house. You're not going to do this. Like,
Mm.
really shield them, because you don't want them to be put in this position to where they're going to be abused, or they're going to be put in this position with someone. And it's not funny, but the interesting thing about it is, and just knowing how it affected me in my childhood, like as a parent, you never know, you know, you
Yeah.
think that someone is safe, and it as a parent, I can just imagine how it will break a parent down to know, oh my gosh, I put you in this position
Mm.
of being around someone. I had no idea that they were this other person.
Mhm.
And so it that in itself can be traumatic for a parent as well. To know that your child um, has been abused, and what I really want to say is like about that is a lot of children, or we grow up resenting our parents, we grow up with just that resentment of everything. And you have to understand, like, once you really take a deeper look, you really have to understand the current place that that parent was in.
Yeah.
You have to give grace and understand, like, they wouldn't put you in harm's way if they really knew, that those type of
Hmm.
things. Um, but yeah, it really plays a huge role as far as like the parental patterns. Plays a
Oh
huge
yeah.
role on how you are and who you become.
And when you're, it's, oh, there's so many parts. But when we talk about things like PTSD, I mean, I have personal experience
Mm.
with a provider being like, you have PTSD. And me being like, nah, don't even trip. Like, no, I don't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really like you have to like, and that's where like the self-awareness really comes into play.
Yeah.
It's like it makes you want to sit down and really understand, because what happens is like, you don't realize why you do the things that you do, or
Yeah.
why, you don't realize how trauma also affects how you treat others. You don't
Mm.
realize how trauma makes you treat yourself,
Yes. Yes.
and I think I've spoke before, like, a lot of people are like, they're so quick to tell someone, oh, you're insecure, you
Mhm.
lack confidence. And it's like, no, I'm not insecure. I'm just someone who's dealt with a lot of trauma. And so I'm very protective over my energy. I'm very protective over
Mm.
my space. And yes, I may question certain things because I really want to know your true intentions, with
Yeah.
me, your true intentions in my life. And I think that people need to be a little bit more, they need to give a little bit more grace, and they need to be able to not, um, they need to be able to feel okay with giving those people the affirmations that they need, you know,
Oh.
giving people those words of encouragement. Don't think that just because they're asking you, do you love me? Do you love me more? All these,
Hmm.
don't think that that is a sign of them being insecure. That is just a sign of them, coming into this moment of like, that it's a sign of fear, obviously, but it's also a sign of them just kind of trying to balance their nervous system from believing that they can't be loved, or they
Yeah.
can't, those type of things. So you have to really give grace, and being on this journey for the amount of years that I've been, and just really educating, I had to reframe my brain as well. It's funny because when I think I had started going on this apology tour at one time, because I had noticed that the things that I didn't understand, um, actually, I had given an ex an apology, and I'll make that as an example. I had to apologize to an ex because I didn't fully understand his grieving process, when it came to his parents.
Mm.
I didn't understand his grieving process. I didn't understand grief and depression and how all of those things were. And in my mind, I was like, because I was like, okay, you need to be, you're not supposed to be doing all this. You need to be, okay, yeah, they passed or whatever, but it's been a few years now. Like, why aren't you over it? Like, why can't you get past this? Or why are you allowing this to affect your life right now? And honestly, maybe sabotage some certain things. I didn't understand the grieving process that he was going through. I didn't understand. Um, so years later, after we broke up, I gave him an apology. I had an apology because I was just like, I totally didn't understand it then. I didn't get it. And I hope that, my apology is accepted, and that I didn't put a bad taste in your mouth. Like, I hope that you may have a better outlook or look at me. Because you never want to leave someone like feeling like, dag, that person is a horrible person. Like, you
Yeah.
never, I don't want anyone to think that I'm a horrible person, I'm this and that. I think we all have had our toxic moments. Um, and speaking my truth is really me saying, yeah, I know that there was times where I was toxic as hell, just really toxic, in my thinking, because once again, I wasn't managing certain traumas. I didn't know how to handle certain things as it related to abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
rejection. Self-love has been a huge kind of journey for me. And a lot of those things, I projected to other people, or a lot of those things, like and so it takes a lot of time. But once it feels great to be in a space to where you can own up to your own mess. You can own up to
Huge.
saying, yeah, you can own up to saying, listen, I was toxic AF, but I am trying to be a better person. I'm learning, and really asking, especially the people that really matter, like, how can I be a better person to you? How can I be a
Mm.
better friend? Because that was also another thing, was tapping into friendships and relationships. And I remember talking to my therapist, and I was just like, I suck at relationships. I was like, I just
Speaking your truth
suck.
in a relationship is hard. In
It
a
is.
friendship, in a romantic relationship is
Any kind of
hard.
relationship. And it's even harder when you don't have trust.
Mm.
It's harder when when you only trust people to do you wrong and don't trust
Ooh,
people to do you right.
ooh.
So
Cause
that
hold
listen,
on. Cause doing that, I'm seeing that. Like
mhm,
when people when there's conflict, because I
yes.
do a lot of conflict resolution and mediation.
Mhm.
And again, like I'm a professional at these kind of things, de-escalation, etc.
Mhm.
But what do you do in friendships when someone is not a professional at this? How do you navigate that when you're in a friendship, right? And
Yes.
friendship means that we have a common understanding that we at least want to do each other right,
Right.
right? But then someone doesn't.
Mhm.
Someone didn't do you right. How do you go to them and say, friend, right? Because we're friends, so we're supposed to have a common
Yeah,
understanding that we
we
want
are.
to do right by each other, but you
Mhm.
didn't do right by me. How do I go to you and say, that didn't make me feel good. I don't feel safe with you now. That betrayed me. How do you do that? You know what I mean? Because people
Yes.
be ready to just walk out of the friendship, no
And
discussion.
listen, and I,
Oh, ugly.
I, and I've been that person. Like, I will go ghost in a minute. I swear I would cut it off if I felt as though, if I felt those kind of things. Like, I would just completely cut it off. Um, but now, I've gotten a little better with trying to ask those questions that you asked, like trying to say, okay, if this is a relationship that I truly value, if this is a person that I love and I truly value, if I'm not just looking at you as a friend and I'm looking at you as family, that I need to put a little bit more effort into
Mm-hmm.
how I show up for you, and not just expecting you to show up for me in a certain way. And a lot of things, we talked about learned behavior. And some people, they don't know. Like you said, they just don't know. They never were they were never taught how to navigate relationships, how to navigate conflict, how to any of those things. And
Right.
so when you don't have those, I think it becomes a moment when you get sick and tired. I think with all of these aspects, you have to get to a moment where you're just sick and tired of either losing people, losing friends that you really felt as though you look back, you're like, "Oh, that was petty as hell. We could have made up. We could
Mm-hmm.
have, you know, once you start losing people, and then also just kind of losing your way of thinking, um, it should kick that door, it should kick
Yeah.
that door open in your mind and say, I need to make a change. I need to really make a change. And you need to be comfortable, whether it's friendships, whether it's being comfortable having those hard conversations with your child. Um, Whether it's romantic relationships, especially, like, I think people, we always look at relationships and we think about the romantic side and our loved ones, but no, relationships
It
is
really
everything.
is. It's the
And
whole
so
community.
it's the whole community. And so it's like, because the way that I approach romantic relationships was totally different than I approach female relationships. And I had to look at that too. And I don't know, like you would hear people, I can't recall who was the last speaker who said this, but when you hear about people that say, Dag, you gave that man 10 times, 10,
It's
10,
11 chances.
you gave him 10 years. You gave him all of this, but that one friend
Yeah,
you cut them off like boom, but you
because she
gave
looked
that
at you
man,
sideways.
yeah, you gave that man 10 10 chances. Or
Yeah, the
even with,
whole time you're saying she just had
yeah,
something in her eye. She just needed you to
yeah.
ask her. She had
And
something in her eye. She wasn't even looking at you sideways.
exactly. Or, parents with their children, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you hear the stories about how children feel neglected, how children feel
Mm-hmm.
abandoned, and sometimes it may come from their parents dealing with their own rejection or abandonment issues, and they're fighting more so for their romantic partner in their marriage and their relationship, and not really fighting for that relationship with their child, or not really seeing like what they're doing is affecting their child. Um,
Ooh.
it's like it's so much you have to unpack, and it's really uncomfortable. Um, it can be uncomfortable. It can be painful.
Yeah.
Um, because in going back to grief, and so just to kind of, we talked about like this year, I made this challenge. I was like, this is Heal 25,
Mm-hmm.
25, and 25, or the number 5, is about change. Which is very interesting, because we've already seen, like, this year alone has just been, it's like, what is happening tomorrow? Because
Every day.
like every day it's like you have to prepare yourself for some kind of abrupt change, something happening. And honestly, spiritually, the number 5, it's about change. It's about coming into life, with a lot of different things. And so I tapped into, our, like I said, the last 2 years have really been about healing. Um, and really kind of tapping into those negative thoughts that may have deterred me from moving forward with certain goals that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then also, once again, going back and tapping into what I may have done to, contribute to broken relationships or
Yeah.
broken situations. Um, but but yeah, it's uncomfortable, and healing is also a grieving process too. Um, because you're grieving, especially when
So
you're
much
trying to
grief.
change, you're grieving yourself, you know, and like you don't even like you there's times where I've just laid there, and I couldn't process anything else for the rest of the day, and I would just lay. I made journal, and like this Heal 25 challenge was a journaling challenge. It was also fasting and praying. But I would just be crying as I'm writing in my journal, just really releasing a lot. And when you start reading your own words and reading, the things that you've been through, or certain, it's just like, oh my gosh. Or who you've become. Like, I've been spending a lot of months grieving myself, like grieving
Mm.
that old person that I was. And
Yeah.
I seriously, like, it's been an amazing journey. It's been hard, and healing isn't like a linear thing. Like, it's ongoing, it's
Yeah.
constant.
There's a
But when
lot
I
of
look,
grief.
yeah, but um when I look back to where I was before then, because even when I was doing mental health and stuff, I was more so, I think, I feel like I was distracting a lot from me and trying to give it to other people. Like, for me, helping other people helps me. But then I started realizing, like, meeting with these other people, and I give it up to therapists who do this every day, because the energy that you give to so many people, the energy that you give to uplift people every single day, it's a lot. it
Yeah.
it takes a lot. It really takes a lot out of you. It also can trigger you, as well. It's a triggering experience too, because you may hear a story that's very similar to yours, and you're here trying to motivate someone to overcome their challenges, and then you realize, well, damn, I didn't really fully overcome mine. Like, I fully
Mhm.
haven't really addressed it. So I feel like it distracted it. So now it's really about getting back to self. Um, and that's what I feel like the healing journey is getting back to yourself and pouring into you. Self-love, reflection, self-care. Like,
Yeah,
I'm really big on self-care, like we talked about, whether if it's a long weekend, you best believe one of those days is only about me. Like,
yeah,
it's only about me. Um, and then even throughout the week, is like making sure to prioritize my self-care,
yeah.
and all of that. I think
And
is very
being just
important for
as
me.
disciplined.
It's
Being just
yeah.
as disciplined with that self-care as you are when it's time to work. Because
Yep.
when I was deep in my toxic productivity, oh, when it was time to work, oh, I'm there. I'm 10 toes
Mhm.
down. I'm early.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable. I'm settled in for the long haul.
Yep.
But when it's time to rest, I might be checking my emails on my phone while I'm watching the show. I might be
Don't
editing something
yeah.
on Canva.
Right. And in the back of your mind, you be like, put the phone down.
Yeah, and
Stop.
now I
You're
do. Now
telling
I'm like,
yourself you know better.
calm down until tomorrow. You ain't sending no email. You are resting right now. And I
Yes.
remind myself, you rest right now, and then guess what? You get to show up fully when it's time to work. Because
Yes.
you have to. You
You
have to have
have
that
to.
balance and discipline.
You have to, and I have to quote you on the booked balance and blessed. Like we were talking, like I love that because you know, be, I don't want to be. Yeah, of course we want to be busy. We want to have certain things, but I'd rather be balanced. And I've been a workaholic.
Hmm.
I've been like go go go, have to do this, and a lot of times I realized I wasn't doing that for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that for me. I was doing all that for other people. So when you do that or put yourself in that position where you're just going, 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 and it's not necessarily for you, especially you'll burn out. You'll completely burn out. That's why I say even people that are working like full-time jobs. And there's a lot of people that are working full-time jobs. They're coming home, they're a parent, so they're taking care of the household. They
Yeah.
may also be an entrepreneur. So they
Yeah.
have to balance that.
Hmm.
Then you also have to balance, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to do this.
Yeah.
All of
Don't
these
have a
things.
personal goal.
Yeah, like yeah, and then you have your personal goals. It's a lot. And you will get burnt out if you don't learn how to balance all of those things.
Yeah.
And anytime that I meet someone or talk to someone and they're just constantly go and go and go, I know I get on their nerves because I'll be like, you need to chill. Like, you're doing too much. You need to chill.
Hmm.
And I don't like to like put negative thoughts in their mind, but I also try to make people understand like this stuff right here it's going to stay. If you burn yourself out to the point to where you unexpectedly like is in the hospital, or you unexpectedly, there's people that are, stress is a killer. So
Right.
I'm like, then what good are you to whatever you're doing then? Like, you have to think about that. Like, you're not going to be good to anyone if you're not good to yourself. Period.
And that's where the conditioning really be coming in for me
Hmm.
because we who are we conditioned to listen to? Whose
Hmm.
truth are could we conditioned to accept?
Right.
Is it our truth that we're conditioned to accept, or is it everybody else's? And do the
Yeah.
everybody else always have our best interest in mind? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, to a certain extent, when it comes to speaking your truth, you
Hmm.
have to be willing to listen to you once you've spoken the truth. So it's a two part. You gotta gain that knowledge, that confidence.
Yeah.
You gotta, and I would remember when you said I'm not traumatized, I'm not insecure, I'm traumatized. I was like, that's real. And I feel
Hmm.
like also we're not insecure, we're also cautious, right?
Yes.
Because we've spoken our truths in the past. It didn't always work out well. And so now I'm working myself back up to speaking my truth. And
Yeah.
I'm working myself up to listen to myself, believe myself when I speak my truth, and know that everybody don't gotta accept it.
Now that is a big one. Acceptance, being able to be okay with the fact that people, they're just not going to accept you. Everyone's not going to accept you. Everyone's not going to love you. Everyone is, you just have to accept it, because I think that also when we kind of go back to trauma, as well, and we talked about being judged or not feeling safe to be yourself, is because we're so worried about what the outside world, how they're going to look at us, you
Yeah.
know um and I would say definitely for me, that was one of the things that I was like, wait a minute. Now I'm to the point, like, I don't care how you feel, because you will literally suffer in silence because you're trying to appease everyone else. You're trying to coddle everyone else's feelings. But guess what? They're not going to do that for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you realize that the same grace or the same empathy you're giving other people, they may not always give that to you. And it's just important, not saying to not be empathetic, to not give people grace, but to also give yourself grace. Give
Yeah.
yourself a moment to be able to be true to you. And if they don't like it, then that's on them. But if they really love you, and regardless if they dislike your viewpoint or how you do things, they're still going to love you anyways. And
Period.
that is, yeah. So that's how you really know if the bond that you have is true. That's how
That's that
you
trust you was talking about.
Yeah, that's when you really know how stable and how healthy, because it's really about healthy relationships. Like right now, I need it to be
Deep.
healthy. The moment that my nervous system start going boom, 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 it's like alert, abort,
Yeah.
get out of there. Like I need to feel healthy. I don't care if it's at my job, and if it's
Period.
at my job or what have you. Like I'm like, wait a minute, like this doesn't feel right. Like I need this, we need to make this right. We need to figure something out. Or even at home, like I said, I and it you talked about knowing yourself, and like and that's really important, because when if you are in a broken state, okay, if you're dealing with a lot of shadow work, especially, and you're like going through the state of not trusting your own self, you don't trust your intuition, you don't trust, you don't trust a lot of these things that has been given to you to guide you, to help you,
Mm.
navigate through certain spaces. And I think it was one point in time, was really, really just dealing with just the upset of, whether it's heartbreak, and just like, oh my gosh, like, why do I keep going through this, when I knew better in the beginning? And it really kind of goes back because like I said, shout out to the dating pool and talking about relationships. And we talk about red flags, in
Mhm.
relationships, and seeing those red flags in the beginning, be like, oh, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I'm just tripping. And then months later, them red flags start waving and slapping you across the face, and you like, now you're put in this position where you're like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I do something sooner? You're so
Mhm.
deep into it now, and it
Mhm.
makes you question yourself. And I think we put ourselves in those positions, not really, it's not intentionally. We're human, we want to see good in other people. We want to see, we want to trust. Like when you're trying to learn to trust people, you have to be vulnerable. You have to do that. And it really sucks when people break that trust.
I think
Um,
I think sometimes we get caught up because we have to speak our truth.
yeah.
And I think I know for me, like I be reading my birth chart. I don't know if y'all be into astrology like that.
I'm
Listen to your
I'm
birth
into
chart. It'll help you
astrology.
out.
I'm listening. I'm here. I'm here
So
with you.
my birth chart tells me that I tend to view people through rose tinted glasses. Okay, that's my truth. So
Mhm.
if I know my truth and I'm speaking my truth, I know I'm gonna give people a benefit of the doubt. I
Yeah.
need to be aware of that because it's
Mhm.
my truth, right?
Mhm.
What I don't need to start doing is speaking their truth for them. through those rose tinted glasses. Oh, they're
Yeah.
not this, they're just, that's me speaking their truth for them.
Yes, it
I don't need to
is.
speak nobody's truth but mine. Don't speak their truth. Let
Yeah.
them show you who they are. Speak
Yes.
your truth, even if it's just to yourself, right? Because then we go build that trust with ourselves. If I never speak my truth to myself, I don't know what my truth sounds like. But if I'm
Hmm.
getting started and I start speaking my truth just to myself first, and then I peep it, oh, okay, my truth was right there. My truth was right here,
Hmm.
right? Then I can
Yeah.
start learning my truth and stop trying to speak everybody else's truth for them.
Yeah, and you know what? That is, I love that point because it really does, it brings it back to you. It brings it back to you and being holding yourself accountable and kind of going back to that thing like you have to believe people, who they are. And just because they're that way, that should not have any kind of impact on you at all. Because you know the walk of life that you know your journey, you know your path. And it's so important, I think, because when you don't know, that's when you do get hung up into dag, now their truth or who they really are is wearing me down. Is taking me completely out. I don't even know
Mhm.
who I and then you start losing yourself because you haven't taken the time to sit with yourself, to understand who you are, to know your truth, to know, have clear boundaries. You know, I think anyone who has dealt with any kind of trauma, anyone who, even if you have a mental health condition, and I spoke a lot about this when I've done a lot of mental health and wellness classes. Boundaries is important.
Mm.
Boundaries is they are important. And it's not really about setting boundaries to say, oh, to because you're better than anyone or whatever. It's about setting boundaries so that you can honor yourself and
Mm.
honor your truth. Because if you know that, being in certain environments or being around certain people or doing certain things or whatever, if you know this about yourself, how it's going to affect you, you have to set those boundaries and not allow people to talk you out of those particular boundaries, which is very hard to do,
Yes.
especially when
Yes.
you are not really like a people pleaser, but you want to make other people happy. And I am a full I'm such an empath and it's so annoying. And
Same.
it's like it's so annoying. I hate it sometimes because I'm just like, I should be like go somewhere, but I'm more so like, how can I help you? Like, how can I make you better? Even if, like I said, and I think a lot of empaths, they face that is like they want to see so many people shine.
Mm.
They want to see so many people see their light, but we have to give that to ourselves as well. Like
Yes.
we have to make sure that we set those clear boundaries and give that to ourselves. And sometimes you have to be that person, be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't give you what you need right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like you
This
have to
is the
tell
thing about
people
boundaries. That's what you just
it's a
said.
big
That's why
thing.
boundaries
It's a
are
big
so
thing,
important.
especially when you're someone who people always come to you to fill
Yeah.
their cup. you know if you're like an empath or a spiritual person or just someone that just have that divine way of thinking. Um people are going to always come to you because you have that healing spirit. You have that healing spirit, and so that's just the common like attraction. And that's a lot of too why a lot of healers or empaths get into these uh not so 50-50 relationships, that sometimes they find themselves attached to narcissists or to people
Hmm.
who are emotionally abusive, because of that. And that's why the boundaries are so important.
They
It's
are key.
so important. It's key. It's so key. And it would help alleviate a lot of pain in the future
Yeah,
because
I
you
really
said
want
it.
to draw out like what you're saying here about boundaries and
Hmm.
how you show up. People are always going to come to you
Hmm.
and you're always going to want to show up for them,
Yes.
but your boundaries help you actually do that. Your
Yes.
boundaries help you say no when you know you're not going to show up right. You're
Mm-hmm.
tired, you're irritated, your cup's low. You don't need to show up like that anyway, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to show up as your best self. You're not going to show
Right.
up as your most loving, useful self.
Right.
Your boundaries help you say no when you're not going to show up right, and help you show up as the person that you want to be. That
Yeah.
not spread thin person, that person who can lock in and focus on who you want to help, right?
Yes.
Because I've been that person who just wants to say yes to everybody. I said yes to you and yes to you, and now I'm double, triple booked. I can't show up for
Mm-hmm.
nobody because
Yeah.
now I'm just like, I'm doing way too much. Like you said, they doing too
All
much.
yeah, all you're
And
all
it
over the place.
shows. The
Yeah,
way
it
you show
shows.
up in your relationships, it's evident that you have spread yourself too thin.
Yes, yes, yes. And once again, it goes back to the burnout,
Yeah.
and burnout doesn't always have to be, you can be emotionally burnt out, you know,
Yeah.
and so it's really, you really have to protect yourself and protect your energy and protect how you, like you said, in protection, I feel like protection boundaries go hand in hand.
Oh,
And that's
absolutely.
really what boundaries are. They're really protecting yourself from yourself
Yeah.
as far as,
And
um,
from conditioning,
and
because
from
we live in this
conditions.
society that says give to other people, and
Right.
that's going to give you the energy to give to yourself. But that's a lie. It's the
It's a
other way.
lie. It's
Give
a
to
lie.
yourself, and that
Hmm.
will then give you the energy to give to other people. You have
Yeah.
to put your mask on first
Hmm.
before you can put someone else's mask on.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not as easy as it sounds, especially when you're so used to being that person,
Mhm.
and once again, just tapping into going back to the childhood, because some people, they've been like that since they were kids, and they just grow into it, and it just kind of continues. um so you definitely have to, once you get there, it may take a minute, but once you get there, you'll feel the difference.
Yeah.
You'll feel the difference internally. You'll definitely feel, your brain is not as all over the place, you know, because like you said, like it's hard to juggle but so many things at one time.
Yeah.
So, I think a place of relaxation, like really relaxing your mind and making sure that you are giving to yourself before you pour out into the world is so important. It's not only important to your mental health, it's important to, just, the physical, the mental, emotional. I mean, it's important to your journey overall, especially if you're, coming into this healing journey. The power of saying no, the power of voicing, I'm not comfortable with that, because sometimes we may not speak up and say, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not, you have to be able, and that's another thing of speaking your truth. Like at first, there'll be times I'll just sweep things under the rug. And what happens is I can go ahead and just blast it out in my journal and get it out my system. And then I can also, when we kind of go back to dealing with conflicts, if it's, a relationship, or I can voice how I feel. And not everyone's going to give you a safe space, but if I know that if I feel safe and secure within myself, I'm going to create my own safe space, and I'm going to tell you how I feel. Now, how you take it, that's
Mhm.
going to be how you take it. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to harbor all of these feelings and let you feel as though you can just run off with my energy and be good with it. No, we're not
Ooh.
doing that.
And you just brought something to me too that I feel is important to say. When you speak your truth,
Mm-hmm.
after a long time of not speaking your truth,
Mm-hmm.
people will respond. They
Yeah.
will say things like, well, why you ain't never said nothing?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to put it on you.
They
You
are.
allowed me to do this. You allowed this to go on for all this time. What's your problem now? Right? Right?
Yeah, and you could be like, you know what? You're right. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. But guess what? That ended today.
exactly. You claim your power
You claim your
and be
power back.
accountable, right? Because I am accountable to what I've
Mm-hmm.
allowed. You're
Yes.
right. I am accountable to that, and that has ended today. You're right.
Yeah.
I
You're
allowed
right.
it, and I am no longer allowing it.
Yeah,
So just as easily as you accepted me allowing it, accept
accept
me
me
no
not
longer
allowing
allowing
it.
it, because
Exactly.
we've agreed that this power is mine and I have taken it back.
Yes. And if you can accept that, and that's why, and some people, they just don't understand change. I don't feel
Hmm.
like a person should be the same person that they were last year or the year before. Like,
Hmm.
people are going to change. You have the freedom to change your mind at any given time. You have the freedom to change your responses. You have the freedom to change how you move and navigate through life. You have the freedom to do that for yourself. So it goes back to, if they accept it or not, that's on them. That's a personal problem.
Yep.
But for me here, yes, I understand. I accepted X, Y, and Z last week, but this week and moving forward, I'm no longer accepting that. Are you down with it or you're not? Because this
Yeah.
is how I'm going to move. And especially when you know that because there's a lot of people that they're just takers. They're takers. You have to be able, that's another way of just kind of have to be discerning of who those people are and knowing what place to put them in your life,
Yeah.
because that's another way of setting boundaries. Because sometimes setting boundaries, you got to put people in their own little bucket, because you're like, listen, we're good here, we make it, kick it and do this, but I won't be able to kick and do anything else with you. Like, you have to sometimes accept people for who they are, where they are, and just
Yeah.
put them in that box. And
And
I
that's
think that that's
relationship
okay.
healing. That
Yeah.
is relationship healing.
Yeah.
Sometimes healing your relationship means a lot of distance between you and that person.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it allows you, it allows you to kind of, I don't want to say get out of your head, but it allows you to not take on all the burdens of feeling as though you are pressured to deal with something that you don't really need to deal with. And
Yeah.
it goes back to taking back your power, because any kind of person who's dealt with traumatic experiences, one of the main things is you feel like you're losing something. You've lost your power. Either you've lost your voice, you've lost something. And so a lot of people's journey when they're dealing with PTSD, or trauma, any kind of traumatic experiences, is relearning how to take that power back, relearning how to find themselves again. And that's really what it is really taking that power back, taking your voice back. Um, and that's why, and I wanted to touch on, when we talk about cycles,
Hmm.
for example, um, women or women and even men, I'm sure, that are exposed to maybe sexual traumas or sexual things at a young age, they start exhibiting certain patterns to where they feel as though, or sometimes they may equate sex to being love, or they
Hmm.
may equate those certain ways that they've been treated as being healthy and things like that. And so they go through life, and all they're doing is they're thinking that they are doing things the right way. They're hooking up. Some people, if I've always said that there's two, and I talk about this a little bit in Seeing Myself in Her Story, which is a book that I wrote with 48 phenomenal women, and we just had like certain healing journeys. But it talks about, there's certain two sides of people who've been, and there may be more, but two sides that I talk about of people who've been maybe sexually molested or abused. And one side is they become that they can project that abuse to other people. So now they become the person who they're unintentionally sexually abusing other people, because maybe they're only going to people for sex. They're only using people for that, and there's no real connection. Or they may be scared to form any kind of connection with anyone. So it's like either they're over connected, they become promiscuous, they become, really deep, like get really deep, and you find women, they start soliciting, their body or different things. Like, everyone has a story, right? And so I think it's really about understanding, okay, how did that affect me and get me to where I am right now? um and like how can I change my perspective on that. Like, how can I really dig deep into the trauma, into those wounds? Because there is a such thing when you do deal with a lot of PTSD, and my brain is all over the place. So I'm sorry if I'm skipping things, but like if you deal with PTSD, you have certain things that you forget. That's
Mm-hmm.
another thing of knowing that you have PTSD, your memory. You have memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you do something to where everything is bogged down. You may not even remember certain things that's happened. You know it's happened because you may have spoken it out loud before, but you've like drowned it, like you've dug it really really deep, and then that's when those triggers happen. When certain people come do something and you get triggered, you don't even know what those triggers, you're like, what the hell, where did this come from? That's because it's
Mm-hmm.
triggering those old childhood wounds that you've dug so deep to try to forget. You have to try to remember it. And I say that because remembering that is what's going to save you for now. You know, it's really that saving grace. And I don't know if anyone like watches like Law and Order. Like I love Law and Order, but I was watching like this old episode about where the detectives were put through this trauma focused therapy. And it can also be like hypnotic therapy as well, that
Mm-hmm.
where basically you're sitting there and you have to pretty much speak out loud and replay that certain traumatic experience that you dealt with. You have to dig deep and replay the everything. Can you imagine if everyone had to go through something like that and had to sit in the office with the therapist or someone and had to replay a traumatic experience and unlock those doors, basically pull everything from the root all the way up?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, it's a releasing experience. It's that release is important. And I think that that release is something that a lot of people should embrace, um, and hopefully can help lead them towards that balance kind of outlook. And it'll help you understand what your boundaries are. It will help you understand all of those type of things. So I had to, that just kind of made me think about just so many different things. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but I was like, yeah, that we definitely need to hold yourself accountable, for sure. If you can't hold yourself accountable, you're really not going to be able to move past and get further. Because there's a lot of people that they're unable to progress and do certain things because of the discipline, and they lack discipline because sometimes people lack discipline and it could be trauma rooted, you know. So you gotta face it. You have to face it.
Yeah, one of my favorite Twitter people, uh, Supernova Mama, she says misbehavior is communicating an unmet need,
Mm.
and that's in children and in adults.
It is. It is. And that's a very strong quote. It really is. I mean, at the end of the day, what you don't deal with, what you don't, deal with or set a tone for in the beginning, it's going to crumble towards the end. And you have to you definitely have to understand those things and have those open. I think communication is another thing that's extremely important. Whether
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
you and I, yeah, talking and communicating, you never know what even just 5 minutes of communication will do, and how it will enhance a relationship
whew,
or what have you. You just never know. And like I said, people shouldn't have to tell you their story for you to give them grace. They shouldn't have
right.
to tell you their darkest, deepest, horrific moments in life in order for you to give them the respect and grace that they deserve. Um, and there are people that, like I said, they project those hidden things, and they may appear to be the worst person in the world. Like their energy is completely off. They are just toxic. Like we talked about the toxic. Like everyone goes through their toxic cycles. I feel like, um, give them grace
Yeah.
sometimes with that.
I
Give
mean,
them
look,
grace.
some people haven't told the truth since they were a kid, right? Since they started getting shut down. That was the
Yeah.
last time they spoke their truth.
Yeah.
Ever since they just been holding the truth inside, and that can do something to you.
Yeah, and some people they also don't know how to accept truth.
Ooh,
Like a
Wake up.
lot of people, they don't know how to accept it. Like a lot of people want to be lied to, you know? And a
It's
lot of
easier.
people, yeah, a lot of people want to be lied to. They don't want to face the truth. And, you know, sometimes I'll ask somebody, like if they're talking to me and they ask me for their advice or whatever, I'm like, do you want me to tell you the truth? Or do you want me to give you like what kind of answer or response are you looking for? Because some people and unfortunately, you know, there's I think for me also too for with friendships or any kind of relationship, I need you to tell me the truth about myself or tell me if I'm coming at you a certain way. I think some people, friends or whatever, they try to like not step over certain lines. Step over the line with me. I
Yeah.
want you to be honest. Like because how is someone going to grow? How am I going to be a better person not only for, for you, but for myself if I don't know the truth? Because sometimes we don't know what we're projecting to the world. Sometimes we just don't. I mean, you could be very self-aware, you could know a lot of things, but there may be one thing or two things that you don't know unless someone tells you. I think a lot of self-awareness for me definitely came with the help of people telling me how they perceived me or how I was
Hmm.
coming across.
Hmm.
Like, oh wow, I didn't know that you looked at me as this toxic, toxic Nancy. Like I was like this negative person. I didn't know that. I need to
Hmm.
figure out how to fix that because I don't want that energy to be shifted to anybody. So you have to have people that's in your circle that's going to be honest with you as well. In your circle, they have to be able to not only speak their truth, but sometimes they can speak your truth and tell you some things that you either you're not really ready to hear, or either they feel as though you're not aware of. Like,
Yeah,
I
because I
yeah.
mean, how you be coming off in somebody else's truth? I mean, that's their truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
That's their
sometimes
truth.
you could kind of, and honestly, sometimes you may perceive someone to be something, and that's really not who they are. Because
Hmm.
if you have a conversation and you may say, "Well, I feel as though you did this, or you said X, Y, and Z, or you did this," and they be like, "But that wasn't my intent." Like, I didn't mean it that way. And obviously use your discernment when you're listening to them, when they're saying that, to really make sure it's true. But sometimes that's another kind of trauma response too. Sometimes is where you feel, like I said, that people are out to get you and that people are
Yeah,
automatically, and
and
they're like,
accepting
no, that wasn't what I was doing at all.
and accepting within that conversation, like the truth of intent is not the truth of impact. Those are
Yeah.
two different truths.
I love that. Yeah. It's different truths. And that's why communication, like I said, is really a huge part. It's a huge part of it is communication, knowing how to openly communicate to other people and knowing how to accept, certain communication that comes to you. You have to learn how to accept it. And some people
Yeah.
they don't know how to accept it. They can't accept it. So,
And like I know the topic of the conversation is speaking your truth, but
mhm,
they say there's three truths:
mhm.
mine, yours, and the.
Yep. 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 And that is absolutely right. And this is like, sometimes it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You obviously know, or you can kind of figure out what battles to fight. Like every battle is really not yours. Sometimes people are dealing with their own internal battles, and they have to deal with that, and you have to give them that time and space to do that. And like I said, I believe that anyone can change. I believe that people should want to change and be better versions of themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think, instead of like shaking your finger or shaking your head at someone, allow them to go through their journey. They may not have gone through it yet. You may be, 10 steps ahead of them, and you have to give them that grace to go through their own kind of journey or get their own kind of wake up call. And I think sometimes that's a little challenging too. If it's someone that you love, if it's someone that you're like, oh my gosh, like we're on two different wavelengths, how can we bring this together? And you don't really see a positive outcome because you're like, they're still stuck here. And I need them to be here with me. It's
Yeah.
like, what do you do? Do you can't stay in the fight with them. You're gonna have to release those burdens and
Yeah.
let them deal with their stuff and really see if they are willing to deal with it. If they're willing to deal with it, walk side by side and show them the way. Show them how you did it. But if there's someone that's just like, nope, I'm good or whatever, then that's your moment to
Yeah.
use, you know, that's your moment to really be like, establish those boundaries right then and
Yeah.
there.
Your truth,
Your truth.
your moment.
Yep.
Trust them to handle their truth
Yep.
and their moment. Trust is huge because you will be trying to dive in and save people. And I always wonder like how much of that is ego when it's me. When it's y'all, I mind my
Mm.
business. But like when it's me, I'm like, how much of this is my ego where I'm trying to jump in and save somebody else instead of trusting them? Like, am I
Oh my God.
empathizing this person? They're an adult too. Trust that person to stand on their
Yeah.
50 and do what they need to do and handle their journey. Your
Yeah.
journey is not solving somebody else's journey for them. It usually
It's
don't work like
not. Oh my gosh, Selena, it really isn't. And ego, oh, whew, ego is a whole nother kind of conversation because I mean, that is the realest question too. Like, is this my ego? Am I doing this really to satisfy my ego, or is this really, like that right there that's a truthful question. Like
I be
that right there.
reflecting more than I be talking.
Listen, that right there, and that's really what self-reflection is. And to be able to be to that point in your life where you are questioning your own self, because sometimes we get caught up in questioning everybody else and what they're doing. When was the last time you questioned yourself and your true intentions and
Mm,
things like that? That's why I love like journaling, because journaling, I'll put myself in check sometimes. I'll
mm,
be like, oh, okay, that was me. That wasn't them. That was me. And on this particular day, that's really, really helpful for that too. Like if you really want to dig deep and really self-reflect, journaling is perfect for that, because especially now you got to be honest in your journaling too. Like don't be journaling and just making up stuff. Make make sure
Don't
that you
journal for
are
the audience.
right. Don't no. This you need to make sure that you're right in the good, the bad, the ugly, anything that pours out of you, put it on paper and make sure that it's honest. And like I said, it's always good to kind of go back and read back on to like maybe a few months later, just to kind of see how much you've grown from whatever experiences that you were dealing with. I love it, and I'm glad that I'm speaking a lot about it now, because like I said, with this healing challenge, I really started getting back into it a lot more, and I still go to therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy,
Mhm.
and actually, um, dating or anything, I always ask someone, do you go to therapy? Do you believe in therapy? Do you know what have you? Because it's really, really important, regardless of what you've been through. I think having that safe space to go to someone and talk to someone, is really important. It can definitely help you navigate through life. If you don't feel safe doing that, journaling obviously is the secondary option.
Yeah, I was gonna say journaling and therapy are good ways to speak your truth that are
Mm-hmm.
kind of structured environments, right? With
Yeah.
you and your journal, it's just you and your journal. That's you and
Mm-hmm.
you. Speak your truth all on that page. And then with the therapist, yeah, just like Ty is saying, again, that's a space for you to speak your truth. And as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, if one therapist, not every therapist is going to be the one for you. So
Yeah.
find a therapist for you, speak your truth in that environment to that therapist. But those
Mm.
are absolutely both ways to speak your truth.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. And yeah, it is. But speaking of truth, just lastly, just to kind of add to it, it's important. And I feel like, it's not over an overnight success type of situation. It takes time. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes it takes a lot of tears sometimes. It takes that moment of saying, I don't care what anyone may feel about this, because this is not about them. It's about me. when you really start to look at those things as a way of taking care of yourself and nurturing yourself, then once you start, you'll be like, okay, you'll feel that you're on the right path. You'll feel that you're on the right path. And it may help someone else. And that is what I feel is my thing, is to help others, other women and even teenagers, honestly. Like, I really want to tap into childhood, development when it comes to that too, because a lot of stuff, a lot of people, they start a lot of things start from childhood.
Oh yeah.
A lot of things start from childhood.
Everything.
Yeah, a lot. And there are some things you learn as you get older. You may be put in certain situations, but that underlying reason that you're in those certain situations could be from childhood.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's having these safe spaces, just having this conversation with you, like, for me, that is healing. That is, it's healing. It's therapeutic.
Mhm.
um and so I love, like, the small groups where everyone can just be feeling safe to kind of be in their own kind of, being able to speak their truth is just, I've seen so many people sit in environments where and you could tell they've never been given a safe space before. And the amount of tears, the amount of release, like, you could feel, someone just when they've just released all of their burdens. And it's just like, you ask them after that, like, how do you feel now? And it's just like,
Mhm.
I feel amazing. I feel
Yeah.
like I can conquer the world because I done dropped a few bags.
Yeah.
I can really walk. It really boosts up your confidence to
It's
be
this
able.
unburdening
Yeah,
that
it really is. It really is.
absolutely
So I encourage everyone, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman,
a
everyone,
person.
yeah, a person, anyone, um, start learning what your truth is, um, and everyone, like I said, may not suffer from PTSD, but there may have been a traumatic experience or something that you've experienced that may have, you know, brought you to uh, down a certain path. Let's say that. Um, Figure out what that is. Figure out why you are the person that you are.
Yeah.
Figure out why. Figure out who you are. Like, so that way you can fall in love with yourself. Because once you really start falling in love with yourself and things like that, it really, just. I think people can see it.
Mm.
I've
They can.
had people, like, really, what really motivates me or has pushed me, where I'll get people that have maybe followed me. They may not know me personally,
Mhm.
but they follow me and they're like, I'm so proud of you and I see what you're doing and everything. And that is, like, people can see you glowing.
Yeah.
It is a certain glow. It's an aura, and that's what I look for. Like, I'm like, I want people to see the change, and you should want people to see the change in you, and never fear being a better version of yourself. If it's that better version of yourself is taking someone out of your life, then maybe they weren't really supposed to be there.
I
So,
mean, look, okay. I love that, but definitely ask yourself why. Why? Like
why?
one of those 90s songs, those
Yeah,
90s
ask yourself
R&B songs.
why. Ask yourself, who am I?
Huge.
Like, who am I? Why am I here?
Yes.
What has made me this way? If you feel as though you're struggling with, healthy relationships or finding healthy relationships, especially, um, sit down with yourself. And I would definitely suggest getting a journal, something, and write it out. Like, write out the what. And like I said, it may involve you having to do some kind of trauma focused therapy, which you could do on yourself, by the way.
Yeah.
But I promise you, like, once you really start digging into that, you'll start peeling back those layers.
Yes.
You'll
And
really start pulling up, like,
I think for my final word for you all
mm-hmm,
is speaking your power is taking up space.
mm,
Speak your power. Take up space. We are here. I am queer.
Mm-hmm.
Better get used to it. No, but really take up space.
Yes.
Your
Yeah.
your voice is you, and your body, your voice is meant to take up space in this world. So take up space, speak your truth, even if it's only to yourself at first, but
Mm-hmm.
speak your truth. Believe yourself,
Mm-hmm.
trust yourself, and that's where I'm leaving it today.
I
But
love it. I love
again,
it.
thank you so much, Tyi, for coming here, for having this
Thank
wonderful
you.
conversation.
Thank
I
you
know
so
I have
much.
healed from just this conversation, so I know other people have benefited from as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And to everyone out there, you can follow me at Tyi Flood. That's Tyi Flood, Flood. You can follow me on all platforms there. And I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes, y'all, find her, book her, pay her, put her on all the platforms, okay?
Claim it.
My name is,
Listen, we better claim it. Claim
yes,
that. Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
My name is Salenna Green. This has been another episode of the Hot Girls Healing Podcast, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Ooh.
Since I know you're tired, since I know you're stressed, you were always favored and you were always blessed. It's all about that. Hot girls healing. We doing it our way. Hot girls healing. We better day by day. Hot girls healing. We doing it our way. Hot girls healing. And it goes